Okay, can I have everyone's attention, please? Oh, wow. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2024 MLK Day of Action. For those of you who don't know who we are the California Academy of Science's Leadership Design Council of Youth Action for the Planet. We are a youth-led team of passionate climate-minded students. Our goal is to be able to share resources and knowledge amongst fellow climate-minded youth and connect passionate youth to one another so that we can build a youth coalition for climate justice. This is our very first event, and we're really excited to provide you with this opportunity to not only take action, but also to get to know each other as youth who care for our planet. My name is Pablo, and these are my fellow council members. Vivian Yu, she's right in the back. Okay. Surbi Chinta. Tiffany Dong. Sabania Ramirez. Alessandra Palange. Naomi Alush. Sorry, there's a couple more. Mayumi Takeda. Aurora Nicholas. Anita Lowe. Grace G. Sophia Shaw. Sadly, she is not here today. She has COVID. It's okay. She's fine. Me. Thank you. Nicholas Bjorn. Daniela Murawizik. And Alex Leo. Okay. You may be wondering why we are holding a day of action for climate change on MLK Day. We did this intentionally because MLK had an amazing and inspirational connection to climate justice. And here are Sabania and Naomi to talk more about that.
Hello, my name is Sabania, and this year we are gathered today on MLK Day, which actually falls on Dr. King's birthday, January 15th. And we are so excited to have all of you guys here to join us celebrate his life and his legacy. And we are here to talk about how we can continue to talk about and address these big issues through advocacy, activism, and community building. Besides being one of the most recognized figures from the civil rights movement, MLK spoke about environmental justice and environmental issues before the world recognized global warming and climate change. Along MLK's works with the civil rights movements, he also contributed to climate justice. In his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, he wrote, "We must begin to move toward an energy source which is renewable and environmentally safe." It was his mission to create an equitable and sustainable world for everyone. Racism and climate change determine who benefits from activities that produce carbon dioxide and other greenhouse emissions, and who suffers most from these consequences. If you are curious about the term climate justice, people have defined it as the struggle to reduce greenhouse emissions in order to ensure a safe and healthy environment for all people.
When doing research on MLK, there were a couple of elements of his logic that really stood out to our team. In one of his speeches, he claims when machines and computers, profit motives, and property rights are considered more important than people, the giant triplets of racism, extreme materialism, and militarism are incapable of being conquered. The mentioning of triplets of racism shed light on the interconnectedness of both environmental and social justice. Dr. King believed that environmental justice was a component of achieving social justice, including healthier living environments for underprivileged communities and universal access to basic necessities such as potable water and breathable air. In one instance, he protested alongside the Memphis sanitation workers, advocating for safer work conditions and fair wages. Through our MLK Day of Action event, we hope to inspire teen leaders to take action and support organizations focused on reducing emissions and fighting climate change, as well as organizations aiding communities of color who are experiencing higher rates of pollution, environmental degradation, medical conditions such as asthma and heart disease, and other environmental backlash. Like Dr. King, we believe that climate justice is racial justice, and that any fight for the planet must center the experiences, voices, and wisdom of the communities most impacted by environmental racism. And with that, I will leave you with the words of Dr. King. No work is insignificant. All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and importance and should be undertaken with painstaking excellence.
Thank you for that. That's gonna be hard to follow. Okay. Hi, I'm Aurora, and I'm gonna be sharing with you guys the details of our day of action and the agenda and everything that we can be looking forward to today. But first, there are a few rules that we have to talk about. So we ask that you wear your name tag and your wristband that you received at check-in throughout the duration of the event, so that way, for security and identification purposes. Also, the event will be photographed and filmed, as you can see right there. There's a live stream going on. And you should have already received a red sticker at sign-in case you want photographers and filmographers to avoid you in any pictures and like not take pictures of you. There's also no food or drink in the museum except for certain designated areas. And Cal Academy is going to be closing at 5, so please plan your departure accordingly. So we're starting with the opening speech, and which is going to be followed by the panel discussion. Our lovely panelists are Finn Dose from BASES, Harper Fortgang from Project Superplants, Layla Salem from Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, and Dominic Ramirez from Marie Harrison Community Foundation. After the panel, we'll be moving to lunch, which is going to be a workshop combination called Leveraging Youth Power, which will be led by Pablo and Vivian. And there are going to be discussions and activities, and you all were placed in groups based on your interests from your sign-in forms. And it's going to be networking, and hopefully you guys make a lot of great relationships here and meet some fun people. Afterwards, there's going to be an activities fair in the East Garden from 12 to 4 p.m., where there'll be different activities such as mass recycling led by Daniela, messages from youth led by Naomi and Nicholas, Seeds of Hope led by Alessandra, Tiffany, and Nicholas, Climate and Justice led by Sabanya, Pablo, and me. And there are also going to be some partner tables from the panelists and their organizations. Project Superplants is going to host a booth about how superplants can reduce carbon emissions, and you can plant your own native plant to bring home. BASES is going to have a screen printing on a climate tote or shirt activity. And Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action will help you learn about the work that they do, engaging with legislators, public officials for a greener Silicon Valley. Also, Marie Harrison Community Foundation is going to help you learn how they empower underserved communities of color through educational support and bridge socioeconomic gaps. Also, the CAS Volunteer Network is going to be available for giving feedback to the Academy on how they can expand their youth nature-based volunteering programs. And lastly, the Family Nature Club will be making nature crafts, and you can learn more about the program at their booth. The event is going to be open to the public at 2 p.m. and it's going to end at 4.
Thank you, Aurora. And all this wouldn't be possible without our advisor, Alex. Today, you will be participating in an amazing day of passion, compassion, community, and action. And I hope that as you are participating in our numerous activities, that you are keeping in mind what Dr. King has said. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I hope everyone enjoys the activities, and please drop by the activity that I'm leaving, Climate Injustice. And a little heads up, the speech, and the panel will be live streamed to our YouTube and our Facebook account. Yeah, thank you, everybody. With that, let's move on to our panel. Panelists, please come up. I believe in you guys.
Hi, everyone. My name is Serbi, and I'll be moderating the panel. And our first question is introduce yourself with your name, pronouns, organization, and one specific area of climate action that is particularly important to you.
Cool. My name is Layla. I use she, her pronouns. I'm part of Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. Excuse me. I'm part of Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action. And one particular area of climate justice that matters to me is getting more youth involved and engaged in organizations that fight for climate justice, like within the community.
Hi, everyone. My name is Finn Does. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm representing the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit. Throughout today, you'll hear me refer to the Bay Area Youth Climate Summit as BCS. And I'm really interested in the environmental health impacts of the climate crisis and how youth mental health is shaped by our burning world.
Hi, everyone. I'm Harper Fortgang, she, her. I am here with Project Superplants, and I am particularly interested in climate education because as youth, we have a right to understand what is happening to our climate. And the hope is that if everyone can have equal access to information about climate change, more youth will step up and address the climate crisis.
So I'm curious, how did you all get started with climate activism?
Okay, I began my climate action in high school, starting as a gardener through a school blog. This led to a recurring commitment, and in my junior year, entering my senior year, I joined the Marie Harrison Community Foundation, engaging in environmental justice efforts from gardening to active community participation. My journey is driven by a passion for change and a commitment to a greener, more just world.
Cool. I had known about the climate crisis since middle school, and I've written about it as a student journalist in high school, and I hope to do more of that as a journalist in college. But I actually didn't get involved with a climate justice organization until very recently. I went to an SUICA leadership summit last summer, and I decided to join because we had this one like in-person sort of breakout session where we got to meet with our local elected officials. Our city mayor was in the room. We had city council members, youth activists, and we just all had that discussion about what we can do to have more climate solutions in our city. So that was really inspiring to me, and I've been part of the organization since then.
So sort of similarly to you, I found my place in this movement, not like directly through work. I didn't get involved with BCS until my sophomore year. But I would say like the instigator for that was probably, as many of you probably know, like Mars Day in the Bay Area. So when the skies turned orange from the North Complex fire in 2020, I am very connected to my surroundings, and I live in a place where there's a lot of redwoods. So sort of seeing like the apocalyptic skies entering my home was it was very jarring, and it was also very paralyzing for me. So the sort of like distress that I felt in the sense of like doom and gloom that also too, I would say, was like exacerbated by the media, because after that, it was really weird to see like this whole thing that affected us in the Bay Area just be covered throughout like national news outlets, and it was just weird the way that they were framing it for me. So I had a lot of sort of eco-anxiety, and I would say that that really like led me to my organizing work with ACS, because I wanted to turn that fear into more positive, helpful organizing.
My passion for climate activism was stimulated by my interest in science. I've always loved science, whether growing my own algae or experimenting with creating banana biofuel. So a few years ago, I was learning about photosynthesis and how plants naturally intake CO2. And I wondered whether there was a way that we could increase plants' absorption of CO2 as a method to mitigate climate change. And I learned about this exciting science behind native plants that naturally have larger root systems that can sequester more CO2 to protect our environment. So I was really excited by all of this and I wanted to share it with others. But like I'm sure all of us have felt at some point, I wasn't really sure how to even get started. So the moment that I linked all of these ideas that I had with real action was when I stumbled upon the Araco Challenge, a science competition for middle and high schoolers to propose innovative solutions to protect our environment. And I formed a team of us, and we proposed Project Superplants to educate, mobilize, and activate elementary and middle schoolers to reduce CO2 emissions. And since then, we were one of the winners and we received a grant, and we've just continued expanding. We went from a team of 3 to a team of 5, and now we're a team of 30, some of whom are here today. And yeah, my interest in climate activism has just continued snowballing as the project has grown.
It's so great to hear about all the great work that you're doing right now. What are your plans to incorporate climate action into your future?
Yeah, so for me, I want to study business, right? So recently I went to an event, the APEC event. So I learned a lot about different businesses and how they use sustainable practices. So I kind of want to follow what their path, what they're doing, and their businesses, since they're also doing like zero carbon. So I want to, in my company, I want to do like zero carbon and work with other companies and people from the community to do sustainable like practices. So yeah.
Yeah. For me personally, my goal for the future is just to get more youth at my college. I go to Dance College in Cupertino. My goal is to get more youth involved with SVYCA as an organization or other local organizations that are working on climate justice. Another organization I'm part of at my school is like one of our main goals is just to get youth more engaged. And I think climate justice really needs to be a part of that, because we're the ones who are going to be the most heavily impacted by this crisis. And so we need to be empowered to stand up and be a part of that. But for SBYCA, going forward, like into our future, we're hoping to expand our climate literacy programs in libraries, after school programs, and then also school assemblies. So we want to expand our reach and get more youth involved there. We also want to do our first climate tech hackathon, the first in the Bay Area, potentially in the country. So that's exciting. We want to emphasize like more youth involvement in climate career pathways, kind of like Dominic was talking about, like anything you can do can have a climate lens. So we want to do that. And we also want to do the first intergenerational summit with elder climate action. So we have individual action teams, and we're hoping to partner up an elder with each of those action teams so they can mentor and support, also learn from the youth what they care about and what they're working towards. So yeah, those are some of the future goals for.
I guess first, I really just want to say that I really like this question because I think that oftentimes people are taught to think that it's not easy to incorporate climate justice or environmental justice into your future career path or goals or whatever it is that you want to do in your life. And I really think that we're in such a pivotal time in our society and also in the world, just around like so many more emerging possibilities around what we can really do with our careers. And I think that for me, something that I'm really interested in continuing with is thinking about how we're communicating climate change and how we're getting more people involved, how we're getting more people on board with the movement in the streets, educated. And I think a lot of that comes down to psychology and how people's minds work, and also to how major news outlets or the systems in society are communicating the crisis, and are they inspiring people or are they just pushing people down and making them feel like they can't do anything? So yeah, I'm really interested in the psychology aspects, and then also too, I would say policy, because I think that a lot of the actual like systemic change that we need is most achievable through policy and through changing a lot of the policy that we have set in stone. So I really think that climate activism and climate justice can really be incorporated into anything you're interested in. It's one of those things where you just have to kind of find your niche within it because it's very broad. And once you find your niche, you can kind of incorporate that into whatever your passions are, whatever brings you joy, whatever you're good at.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you're saying, Finn, that climate action can be incorporated in whatever career path you're interested in. I'm really interested in merging climate science and climate policy. On the science side, I've been looking at research behind how root systems grow and how we can make root systems larger and more durable to store more carbon. And on the policy side, I've been helping to work on a resolution to introduce electric vehicle charging in San Francisco. And that's shown me all the different stakeholders involved in passing resolutions and how supervisors build support in City Hall. So I don't know exactly what my future will look like, but I hope that it combines something at the intersection of science and policy.
I'm really excited to see what you all do in the future. Could you guys tell us something that we wouldn't have known or is unexpected about your organization?
So yeah, our organization, although it does focus on environmental justice, our organization right now, since a lot of us are seniors and juniors, right now we're about to graduate high school. So what we do at the end of the year, we pick out some candidates. It could be from 5 to 8 students that are in high school, and we give them scholarships. This scholarship supports college students dedicated to improving environmental health and the air quality in the Bay Area. And the scholarship is $5,000 each student, and that's per semester. So it's a testament to our commitment to both environmental justice and fostering the next generation of change makers. So that's something that a lot of people don't know, but that we do every year.
Yeah, that's super cool. I I think one thing that is somewhat unique about SUICA is we have our individual action teams. So we have teams divided up by city, county, and we also have a state team that lobbies for state legislation. So we really like dig into our community's like unique challenges. Like there are different things that are relevant at different points in each community to fight for climate justice there. So we really encourage our youth to like learn the weeds of climate policy. We're not dumbing anything down for them. And we encourage them to become like key stakeholders themselves, also while like emphasizing those climate career pathways so that they can see themselves doing this work for a long time. We want them to be engaged in a sustainable way themselves too, you know? So I think that's like the unique model of our organization.
Yeah, for base, yes, I would say there's a few things. And one of them is that we actually emerged as an entirely youth-led virtual organization. So during COVID, actually Harper's sister, Amelia Fortgang, who founded Base Yes, was trying to address the need to have more effective virtual activism during during the pandemic. And I think that the cool thing about ACS is that we've sort of adapted to more of the in-person way of life, but we still have a lot of ability to do more like virtual workshops, which gives us a sort of unique like flexibility and like fluidness, so we can kind of jump between different environments and engage with different groups. So I would say that that's a really cool thing about our organization. Just sort of how our whole like journey from starting in the pandemic to up till now. And then the other thing is that we have a lot of sub teams at ACS, which I think is a really cool way to do like climate justice and activism. So we have like a newsletter sub team, a workshop sub team, a summit logistics sub team, and social media sub team, and then a grants and sponsorship sub team. So I would say that the really nice thing about that is it doesn't limit the members of our organization to do one specific thing. So they really have to choose like what they are interested in and how they can sort of explore that niche of climate through the sub team. And they're also allowed to be on multiple sub teams. So I think it's a great way to have more of sort of like a holistic approach to climate justice.
This is on a lighter note, but working with elementary and middle schoolers when we run our classroom sessions can often be very funny. And sometimes students come up with crazy and creative ideas. In one activity, we asked them to design their own plant to protect our environment. And some students are serious, like they propose plants that can take less water. Other ideas are kind of funny, like a plant that grows gigantic tomatoes. Some are less viable, like a plant that grows on concrete. I'm not sure how that one would work. But yeah, middle schoolers and elementary schoolers can come up with some pretty unexpected ideas.
How do you guys see racial justice and environmental justice connect to your activism?
So in my activism, I actually like this question a lot because in my activism, I see racial justice and environmental justice as interconnected struggles because the community that I represent, which is Bayview in District 10, is very polluted, right? So we could see it. We really got to look at the data. We could look at it with our own eyes. We see trains, we see abandoned warehouses there, we see freeways, we see diesel. Like if you look at the air, it's not good. If you speak at like families from the Bayview, most of them have cancer, or a lot of people in Bayview that got cancer. So I see it as interconnected, right? So the organization that I work for focuses on acknowledging and addressing these links by pushing for inclusive solutions that break down racial disparities and environmental problems by incorporating racial justice into environmental activism. We also amplify marginalized voices. So we do a lot of community meetings with policymakers. So we bring the people of the community. So it could be like families, kids, youth, whatever it is from the community. And we bring them to rooms where they're policymakers so that their voices are actually heard and they actually can speak for themselves. So we do that a lot. We do that every week or every 2 weeks too. So yeah.
Awesome. I think, like I touched on earlier with the climate literacy workshops we want to implement, we have already started doing this. Our San Jose team has been doing workshops at public libraries. They had they basically have been teaching young kids about climate change and then getting them involved with one sort of action step. So like a bunch of elementary schoolers wrote postcards to San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan about why climate justice is important to them and why he should do something about it. So implementing more of those, and then also in school assemblies, those have a lot of reach. One thing, recently our state advocacy team has been lobbying for 4 years for this kind of legislation, but it just passed this year. California Assembly Bill 285 will now mandate literacy in K through 12 schools. So that's really exciting. So yeah, I think also one of the reasons we want to target more libraries and after school programs is like libraries are one of the main like publicly available places to learn, and so they're more accessible to underserved youth, and that ties directly to racial justice. Like Dominic was talking about, there's often a lot of environmental racism, and like communities of color are the hardest hit. So we want those communities to be centered in the work that we're doing, and to be empowered to fight for climate justice as well. So, yeah.
I just wanted to start off with a quote that I really love, which is environmentalism without social justice is gardening. And I think that this idea is very true because social justice and environmental issues, they don't happen in silos. They all compound together. And I think that where that shows up a lot is for members of marginalized groups and folks that are on the front lines of the climate crisis. So if you're experiencing racism in society, and then you're also experiencing environmental impacts of climate change, then oftentimes those two are linked together. And it's based a lot too on like the area that you live in. So I would say like something that our organization really tries to do is we really try to ground our work in the principles of intersectional environmentalism, which derives from Kimberly Crenshaw's sort of theories around intersectionality, and the term intersectional environmentalism was coined by Leah Thomas, who's an author and environmentalist. So basically what that looks like is trying to think about how multiple struggles in society are interconnected and compound, and how our work for climate justice has to center racial justice, gender justice, queer justice. It has to center all of the different struggles for liberation. So would say that one thing that we do, because this is really where our work centers on, is trying to work with a lot of different organizations from different communities in the Bay Area. So I would say like our main mission is to connect youth and sort of combat like a lot of like movement fragmentation in the Bay Area. So I think that one of the really important things for us is just trying to link the different like social justice movements and causes. So we've done like quite a bit of work with Youth First Apocalypse over in Oakland, and racial justice is like central to their organizing. So we're really just trying to sort of bridge the gaps between different communities. And a lot of that shows up with racial justice.
For Project Superplants, environmental justice is one of the reasons why our project is necessary. We found that there's a significant disparity of what elementary and middle schoolers are being taught about climate change in their schools. Not everyone has equal access to information about climate change. Depending on where you live, where you go to school, what kind of access you've had to the outdoors, people have very different personal experiences of climate change and different information that they've learned about it in their schools. For example, we worked with one group of fourth graders in San Carlos who knew everything about global warming, but a few weeks before we worked with seventh graders in the Santa Rosa area who knew even less than those fourth graders about climate change. But they did have closer experiences of wildfires because they lived near Santa Rosa. So Project Superplants is committed to reaching kids wherever they are, in public schools, private schools, parochial schools, from Santa Rosa to San Francisco to San Jose, to make sure that everyone has equal access to information about climate change. Many other organizations like Silicon Valley Youth Climate Action, as Layla was talking about, and bills like AB 285 are ensuring that everyone has equal access to information, so that, as I said before, when more youth can be informed about the climate crisis, we can step up to address it.
It's really inspirational to hear about all the different things you all are doing to address racial and environmental justice. But it can't be easy to be a youth activist. What are the biggest challenges you faced as a younger person, or how do you get adults to listen to you and take you seriously?
All right, so as a young person in EJ, challenge is overcoming the perception of being unexperienced, but building connections and credibility has been my strategy. So wherever I go, like an example could be right here, right? So what we could do as young people is try to get contact information with everybody that we talk to, like their number, their organization, their email, whatever it could be. And that's what I do. That's what I did also at APEC. So even if they're from different countries, I try to get in touch with them. And even if it's like a week after, I try to follow up with, it was nice to meet you or something like that. Here's my info. I'll talk to you soon or something like that. So building connections and networking is something that I do, and I encourage everybody to do in this room, which can actually lead you to many places. And yeah.
Yeah, I think personally, I think that being a youth can actually be a competitive advantage. When our youth show up to city council meetings and we're like empowered and prepared and we know our stuff, and there's like 20 of us at San Jose City Council meeting, everybody perks up when the youth give a public comment, right? They want to focus and like everyone's paying attention. I think they like to see like the youth bring the energy and adults like to see that like the future is in good hands in a way. So I think as long as we are empowered and supported in order to show up, like I think youth can be really powerful. And so I don't think being young should always be considered as like, oh, I'm young, I'm inexperienced. Like I think we have a really powerful point of view. We're the ones who are going to be the most heavily impacted by this. And so if we're talking about who is going to be most affected by this movement, we want to center that, right? So I think it's really important to center youth in this. So yeah, that's what I think.
I'm going to address this question in two different ways. I guess the first one, I'll just talk about a little bit how I think that one of the biggest challenges that young people are facing is isolation and burnout. So I think that a lot of people that have a desire to get involved in climate activism or already are involved find themselves sometimes working alone or working in silos, which I know from my personal experience is not an easy way to continue like your momentum in the climate fight. So I think it's really important that youth try to connect with each other and also to try to band together intergenerationally. So I would say that's one of the things that like our organization tries to do a lot is give youth the opportunity to meet other youth through events and through workshops, especially our summit, which we actually had at the California Academy of Sciences this year. So once youth can see that there's other people that are interested and involved in the same things, they can feel more connected and less alone in the movement. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, which I'm not exactly sure if this question was totally around, but I think it's important to think about like what are the greatest threats like facing our generation as a whole. And I think one of them is that the climate crisis is like a crisis of communication. So I'm actually going to ask you all to like get out your phones right now and Google climate change. And I'm going to have maybe some of you just tell me like what images come up. If anyone wants to share. So I would expect that y'all are seeing probably photos of like burning planets, things that look like the apocalypse, complete things that are probably not even real, totally like animations have been made. I don't know if anyone wants to hold up their phone to just show an example. Yeah, polar bears. So I think something that's really, really difficult for our generation is trying to make the climate crisis perceptible and tactile to people, especially people in the global north that aren't on the front lines of the crisis. And I think that the media and the big mainstream institutions have done a really terrible job at that. Because as you can see with the photos, like they don't look real. They don't look like something that could happen. They look like they're right out of a science fiction movie for something that's going to happen like 500 years from now. And I think that people need to feel like an emotional connection to the climate crisis in order to feel like they can get involved. And I would say like that's definitely something that our generation has to fix, is we're going to really have to think about the ways that we're going to communicate this crisis and get more people on the streets marching and organized. And I think that, using tropes like polar bears, it's tried and true and it doesn't work. So we're gonna have to find like other strategies.
Yeah, just adding on to what you're saying, Finn, when we work with elementary and middle schoolers, we really try to talk about the local threats of climate change that we're seeing here in the Bay Area. We point out wildfires and droughts that we're seeing in California, instead of focusing it on like images of polar bears in Antarctica. We try to make it very personal and emotional. But back to what Layla was saying, counterintuitively, we actually haven't experienced a lot of challenges getting adults to support our project. They've been surprisingly receptive. Why? Well, I think as youth, we're in a really unique position in the activism space. Adults are looking for young voices because they realize that we're inheriting all of these challenges. And when we advocate for the environment, we stand out from all the politicians and all the other adult voices. And I guess more specifically in the context of Project Superplants, one way we get teachers to listen to us is by partnering with them to co-design the sessions. We adapt the sessions to their curriculum, and we take their feedback to continue improving the sessions. So I think that really helps teachers trust us. And teachers listen to us because their students are listening to us. Their students are always hearing from adults who are teachers, but they really listen to and respect us as other youth talking to them. And especially when we're talking to young elementary and middle schoolers, we try to frame our comments so that they can imagine themselves in our shoes in the near future. So yeah, there definitely are challenges to being a young activist, but people also really want to hear our voices.
I'm glad to hear, sorry. I'm glad to hear that it's more empowering rather than challenging to be a youth activist. On that note, how can someone get involved in your organization, especially youth? What is your call to action that you want us to engage in?
All right, so those are the two questions, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can get involved with us. It's really easy to get involved with us. You could send an email or call us or go to the website. Right now, we are looking for youth because there is a project that we're working on. I don't got a lot of details on it, but there is a project during the summer, and we are looking for a lot of youth. The project is called the Yes Camp, and I don't know if you want to, like he said, pull out your phone to go to our website, but it's called the Murray Harrison Community Foundation, or canwelive.org. So we will send out more information about the camp, but what it will have is there will be a lot of field trips, and a lot of the youth will work on EJ and with the community in the fight for social and environmental justice. So it's really easy to get involved with this.
Cool. Yeah, I think similar to what Dominic was saying, we have, you can visit our website and register through our website. I also have business cards with me today. If you want to contact our executive director, I can also give you my email. But yeah, my call to action would just be, if you're not already, join an organization that's doing this kind of work in your community, get involved, find people who are like-minded to you and join them. I think the sooner that we actually get involved in this, the better chance we have of actually fighting the climate crisis. So yeah, get involved and bring your friends.
I like to think of BCS as like a launch pad for climate activism, because I think that one of the most important things for us is trying to get people that are more sort of like newer to the movement involved, and so they can kind of like sample almost like a buffet of like all the different sort of things that they could get involved in the local Bay Area. And then from there, once they've found a niche that they're interested in, whether it's climate mental health or stuff to do with marine science, I think that once they sort of have an idea, they can like run with that, and through our organization, we can support them. And throughout our short history, like we've had a lot of different ways that we've done support. So one of the things that we've done more in the past is climate action plans. So in schools and in different people's communities, we would help like advise different students on an idea that they had to address like a specific issue. So if you were interested in combating like food waste in your school, or combating like sort of, or wanting to make your school like more eco-friendly and like vegan, you could start like a meatless Monday program or something. And that's something that like Base CS could come in and sort of give you advice on how to organize and like run your program. So another thing too that's I think an easy way to get involved with us is just to come to our events. So we host monthly workshops. We're hosting one this month with the Watershed Project in Richmond. So we'll be exploring like the local wetlands and waterways and how they're beneficial for storing CO2. And then another thing too is we're also planning a Earth Day protest around a specific issue. It's very much still in the works, but I think just if you're interested, just like come out, take to the streets, and I think you'll make a lot of connections, and it'll be easier to get involved from there.
There are lots of different ways you can get involved with Project Superplants. We are focused on going into classrooms and schools, but we're also thinking about climate literacy and a virtual module for teachers and other ways to inspire students to create their own projects. So if you're interested, we'd love for you to connect us with teachers in schools that you know, like your old elementary or middle school teacher. And if you're interested in getting more involved, you can serve as a lead at your school to organize students to run sessions all over the Bay Area. So yeah, come talk to us at our activity fair this afternoon if you want to learn more. And also, if you're 13 to 16, I highly encourage you to enter the RECO Challenge through Earth Echo International. Submissions are due in March. It's where Project Superplants began, and I think it's a great way to enter the activism space.
What is one piece of advice you have for youth environmental activists?
Could you repeat the question?
What is one piece of advice you have for youth environmental activists?
Don't feel like you don't got experience, right? Like when I started, I didn't really have a lot of experience or a lot of knowledge about it. But there's people like my bosses or people that are in this every day that really help out, and that they like new people. Like he said, they like new people that are new to this activism. So like he said, also just reach out, and they'll help you throughout the way, right? How they helped me. And they really help you get to places like right now. So yeah, that's my piece of advice. Just reach out, and don't be afraid. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd like to add on to what Dominic said, like just finding ways that you can be supported. Like don't try and do everything on your own. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, is to like, yeah, try and figure everything out like by themselves. Like you should reach out and you should work with other people. There are a lot of people doing really great work, and it's better if you work together on those things and have support for the activism that you're doing. So definitely reach out, make as many connections as you can. And also be mindful of like what you can take on, like make sure you're looking after yourself and making sure that you're not overdoing it, because if you actually want to do this for a long time, you want to sustain yourself. So take it in bites. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, similar to that, I would say don't let the skeptics, cynics, or doomers deter you. I think that along the climate journey, there's a lot of different ways in which like the messaging and the tropes that you hear about organizing and environmentalism can kind of make you feel like the crisis is unsolvable, or that your impacts don't have larger implications for the community. So I think that it's really important to just think about like the little things along the way. Another thing too that I think is often overlooked is that I think sometimes a lot of people think of like rest as being lazy or inactive. And while I do think it's really important that we are putting like our full effort into the organizing, I think that it's really important too to just sort of manage like some of the burnout and connect with the things that bring you joy, whatever that is. I don't know, like it could be just going to the beach or spending time with your friends, reading books, going on hikes, or whatever the activity is. I think that you have to supplement the organizing and the climate work with the things that bring you joy. And I also think another important part of that is like if you don't continue to spend time outdoors, it's it's like you can feel all of a sudden disconnected from the very thing that you're fighting for, which is the planet and its people. So there's that. And then the other piece of advice that I would give, similarly to you, is to just don't work alone. Please don't work alone because I feel like you're going to burn out really fast. And I have in my experience. So definitely surround yourself with other people. Also, other people have so many great ideas, and when you band together, your imaginations just completely multiply. So
You get the group brain.
exactly.
Yeah, I second what everyone's been saying. My advice would be there are many different shapes and forms of activism. So lead with what you're most passionate about. If you like art, if you're good at writing, maybe you love talking to people or working with young kids. I love teaching young kids. So combine something that you love with what you want to advocate for.
Thank you all so much. Now we'd like to open up to the audience for questions. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Julia, and what I was wondering is what are your tips for managing anxiety? I think that sometimes really, there are people who want to be involved but have a lot of fear or even paralysis of saying you're doing the wrong thing, and somehow it's worse when you're trying to do the very opposite. What are your tips for managing that?
Anybody?
I guess I can start. Thank you so much for the question. And I think that one of the important things is just to think about like what sort of degree or to which level your eco anxiety is. And I think that one thing is that it's oftentimes easy to think that your eco anxiety is some sort of like irrational response to climate and is like weird or makes you uncomfortable. And I think that first it's really important to just acknowledge that eco anxiety is not an irrational response. It's actually a completely rational response to the fractures and the problems within our society. So I think after you've been able to recognize that like that is completely valid, I think just surrounding yourself in community with other people who are going through similar things. So I know like there's the Climate Mental Health Network, which hosts like climate psychology webinars that you can join, and like there are climate mental health cafes that you can join and talk about climate anxiety and talk about your eco emotions. So once you're able to sort of talk about that with other folks going through similar struggles, I think that you can feel more of a greater sense of like solidarity. And then beyond that, I think that once you have some more like coping strategies, I think it can be really like transformative and sort of like you'll have more ways to practice resilience.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, I think that was those are really great tips. I think, yeah, definitely acknowledging that your anxiety is valid and like it comes from a very rational place. And once you have like sort of healed that, or like it's a continuous healing process of that. But I think it can also be very empowering. Sorry, my throat. To actually join other people, because often a lot of people who are in these activism spaces, they're experiencing that too. And so I think having like you build solidarity when you have when you take action together as well. So definitely like seeing where you're at personally and making sure that you feel like you start your sort of healing journey in a way. But you can do that alongside other people as well. So I would say try and find people who you trust, who you like, who are doing this work and who can support you. Because I think it's still very worth doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Find a community of people and support you. We have twice monthly super plans meetings at my school, and those Tuesdays always re-energize me. And yeah, I mean, if we're paralyzed with fear, we can't make any progress. So for me, climate advocacy is a way to be active and to empower ourselves instead of just feeling stuck. So find ways to plug into efforts so that you can empower yourself.
She got a question.
What has been a moment in your work or activism that has been most like hope or action inspiring?
I think I'm still pretty new to this space. So I think my most inspiring moment would still be like the moment that got me to join. So I feel like just feeling like you're part of a community and you're all offering ideas and joining together. I feel like that's been the most inspiring thing. And you can find that in a lot of different ways. Yeah. So city council meetings also feel like that. It's just exciting to be in community.
For me, an inspiring, right? Would be the APEC event. I keep on saying APEC because for me is like it's really inspiring seeing that other people from other countries are in the fight. You know, it's not just us. It's not just our cities. The whole world that actually care about the environment, and there are different solutions. Like there was concrete that they made a different type of concrete, different type of glass, the waste management. There's a lot of things that we could do to try to save, save the world, not save the world, but make it greener, So that's that's an inspiring moment because in that space, I think one out of two youth, and the other people were, already older folks. So yeah, that's an inspiring moment.
I would say for me, it would just be like the high of organizing. I mean, I think it's like a really emotionally charged process. So when you put so much work into something that you care about and into uniting people and bringing them together, the final event, whether that's a protest or a summit or a festival, um, like seeing the fruits of your labor and seeing the momentum that's generated from bringing all the people together, for me is just really inspiring. So just this October, when we had our summit here at the Cal Academy, it was really inspiring and just empowering to me to see how many youth were actually interested and engaged, and seeing how so many people left with a greater desire to just stay in the fight and get involved, especially people too that were maybe like skeptical before.
Most inspiring moment for me was after we worked with a group of sixth graders in Rohnert Park 2 years ago. We got an email from the teacher, and the classroom had created posters around their community and written to their city council to advocate for growing super plants. And it was just a really heartwarming moment to see how the classroom had continued taking action even after our session was over. And it really felt like we were creating this wave of youth to youth activism.
Oh, go ahead.
I think not just environmental activism, but any activism in general, like getting involved in your community, it helps you build like through SVYC, it's helped me build my like skill set and my confidence in terms of like how do I say this? Like I feel like it seems intimidating to like give a public comment, to engage in your local government even. So I feel like being empowered, like, no, I can do this. I know what I'm talking about. Like, I feel like that is a really powerful skill to learn, like how to have confidence in what you're doing and how to speak up for things that you believe in. I feel like that's something that's helped me grow a lot, being involved with this. But I don't know if that's what other people think. Dominic, who wants to go?
I guess I can go. I think that for me, it's really helped me discover how a lot of like my skills can be developed. And I think one of the skills too is that just like knowing when to speak up and to not always be silent, because I think it's really easy to just be silent in society and to sort of just go with the status quo or just go with the flow. And I think being in this fight really empowers me and gives me like extra energy to not be so silent for things that I otherwise might be just sort of more indifferent to. And I think that's really helped me to just sort of stand up for other issues too and just be a better person in general.
I think I've learned a lot about how to lead a team. It can be really challenging to motivate team members at times. And at first we were in the very beginning of the project, struggling to get everything moving. And I had to learn to draw on teammates' strengths. Like one teammate really loved coding and another teammate was interested in working with teachers. And so by giving teammates tasks in areas that they were interested in, that motivated them to work on the project. So yeah, I think I've learned a lot about like creating agendas and working with teammates and running meetings, which can be really challenging.
I was just wondering, like, what small things that everyone can do to make a difference in an issue? Because I think, like, for me, I really want to do something, like, I'm not really sure where to start. So like, what are some things that everyone can do that's like small and simple to start to make a change in their community or just in themselves?
I think you can start basically anywhere. Oh my God, okay, sorry. The name tag has been fighting with my jacket the whole day. But yes, so I think you can pretty much start anywhere. Just find somewhere to plug in, find an organization that's doing work you think is cool. And even if you're like, okay, this is something to do, like plant new trees, like go out and like talk to your local elected officials, like whatever it is you may be doing, like there are a ton of different ways you can contribute. And so usually once you start doing something, that can lead to help you do something else. So I would say just start wherever you can, wherever you have like an access point. Yeah.
I would say, like, kind of saying what she said, try to find like the organization, right? Organization that fits you, right? So the organization that I work with, they're from the community that I'm from, you know, it's not like the community across the city or people that kind of look different than me. The people that I work with, they look like me. They kind of, like my boss, she grew up where I grew up, you know, so we kind of have like the same history, and having the same history, we kind of work together, right? And we have the same goals. The reasons why we're in this fight, right? So I would just say, like she said, just get into it. You do a little bit of research, you know. There's different pathways. It's not just it's activism, right? But there's different pathways. There's a lot of jobs. There's different paths. So yeah.
I would say that, yeah, similarly to you, just like find a group in your community that are doing cool things that interest you. I think that one of the great things about the climate movement, environmental movement of today is that there's not really, at least where we find ourselves, like in the Bay Area, there's not like an absence of people doing things. Of course, we need more people on the ground, but there's definitely like a lot of different organizations and access points around the Bay Area. So if you can find like a starting point in your community, I would like plug in there. And I think also to just not to just allow yourself to like initially explore. Don't feel like you have to have it all figured out from the beginning, or like you have to have some sort of specific focus. Like I think a lot of us that are sitting up here today, when we started, it was just really broad, like environmental justice was just the general theme, and like all of us, and from there kind of narrowed it down. So just like don't limit yourself.
Yeah, I think like everyone said, find an organization that you're interested in and take that first step of sending them an email or calling them or attending an event. And then from there, it'll kind of just have a domino effect, and you'll hear about other opportunities or ways to get involved, and you'll figure out what you're most interested in doing. And I guess as a more concrete step, I mentioned earlier the ARACO challenge. Um, that was how Project Superfund started, and I really recommend that you enter it because they give you support and funding to start a project if you have an idea to protect the environment.
Just take opportunities, I would say. Wherever you see something, and if you see something and you feel like you have the capacity to do that, just try it out. It can't hurt, and the worst thing that can happen is you decide like you don't want to do it, and then you don't do it anymore. So I think it can't hurt to start.
I'm curious, as young people, I'm thinking about, I'm an old person and having conversations like with my uncle who's in his 90s, doesn't believe in climate change. And that's been a struggle for me for a long time. And then I go to my cousins who are my age, and I can have a little bit more dynamic conversation. But I'm curious, as young people, how you navigate conversations with your peers, or with other youth that you encounter that maybe don't believe in climate change or don't think that environmental justice is maybe so important that there's other things that they're concerned about. So just curious your thoughts on having peer-to-peer conversations with folks that maybe don't think the same.
Thank you so much for your question. I think that one of the things that like I encounter a lot is just people who like kind of dismiss like organizing or dismiss climate work as just like not interesting. I mean, I think I have a lot of friends too that like don't really like to, I don't know, like talk about that part of myself or like that part of my interests. I think it can be really hard sometimes because like you want to look for support from like people in your life that you care about. And I think one of the things that like I try to do is really just like try to surround yourself with people who care about this similar things. And then on the other side of your question around like how to sort of address people that are like skeptical or don't believe in climate. I mean, I think if it's a family member, it's a harder, more like personal issue. But just in general, I think that one of the things that I try to do is not put a lot of energy into someone that's like a climate doomer or someone that doesn't believe in climate change, because I think that really what they're doing, at least if they're like questioning me as a young person, is kind of just wasting my time when there's so many people that actually do believe in climate change that want to get on the streets. But I think for like a family member, one of the things is to try to like go into a conversation not really with like an agenda, and feeling a little bit more kind of like open and allowing them to kind of like share their ideas, and you can meet them where they're coming from. So maybe think about like what that person's values are and what your values are, and if you can find like a connection to bridge the gap.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think if you, like Finn said, I think decide whether or not this person you want to give that much energy on this, because it can really be draining if every single person you meet who's a climate doomer, you try and like change how they think. It's possible, but it takes a lot of listening, a lot of like emotional work. So if that's something that you're that is important to you and you want to have that kind of discussion with that family member, then that's awesome. But just like make sure that you're not totally draining yourself to do that. I forgot the other thing to say. But yeah, I think otherwise, like you should decide like, is this worth my energy? And then make a choice from there. And find other people, because there are other people who believe you and who are willing to work with you on this. So I think like also for a lot of people, if they don't believe all of this, like the science is on our side, like I don't know what much more will convince someone who's just like, this is not real, other than just like being open and listening.
Yeah, I'd say going back to what Ben I think was talking about earlier, focus on the local impacts of climate change, highlight how that person might be affected by climate change, not 100 years from now, but 5 years from now, 50 years from now, because that personal connection to climate change might make it feel like a more urgent issue. But I don't remember the exact stat, but I think the majority of Americans do believe in that climate change is happening. I think the biggest problem is that people are paralyzed with fear or they don't know how to get started. They don't believe that they can actually make a difference. So offering people a concrete way to make a difference will hopefully counter that paralysis.
Yeah, I mean, I already told you most of it, right? Family members could actually sometimes usually be like that, going back and forth, like, why don't you believe it? Or you see this, you see that. What I would have said, to be honest, you should have brought your family member here to actually, you know, so he can see with his own eyes. There's young people, that actually care about it, and probably bring him here. He'll be like, dang, there's young people here that actually are in this fight. Maybe it is real. So they just next time probably bring him to one of these events, and he'll probably be convinced more.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think find like an entry point, something that you like agree with, something that that family member will listen to, and try and frame it in that way if you can. Like, I don't know, but yeah.
I think like really fast to add on to that, like what are they interested in, and then how does like environment or climate connect to that? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one common example too for people that are maybe more like skeptical of climate, and also too more like conservative leaning, which sometimes there's oftentimes like association between like conservative like politics in America and then also denying climate change. And I think that one thing too is like if this person is like interested in like hunting or whatever, think about like how hunting and like their ability to go outside and like do that activity is going to be affected by climate change. I mean, I think that like, well, a lot of like environmentalists will say like, oh, well, like hunting's bad. And like, I do think there are a lot of like problematic aspects about the trade. Like, I do think that it's important to think about like what their values are and like how their interests connect to that.
And that goes back to like listening. So like pay attention to that person and what they're thinking and what's important to them and how you can talk to them in that way. But I also think the idea of not going in with an agenda, not going in with like, I'm here to change you, like immediately people like close up and they're very reactive to that. So just like, I want to have a closer relationship in this way. Like it can be like, I want to understand, open with like, I want to know more about what you think about this. And then like offering it in a gentle way, not in a like, can't believe you don't see this, like, because then that's going to make that other person feel like you're attacking them or you're telling them that they're dumb. And nobody wants to listen to you if you tell them that they're dumb. So yeah.
I just wanted to ask, who are some figures or a figure that you look up to or that inspire you in the climate movement? Is there anyone in particular you think we should know about or we should learn from?
I'm inspired by the people who I work with. Like it's pretty local for me. I'm inspired by these two sitting here. They hate that I just called them out. But they're doing really great work in the city of Cupertino. But like I think I like to be inspired by the people who I get to talk to and have conversations with. I don't have like I mean I look up to people who are doing cool research and stuff like that. Like I just recently read or I'm still in the process of reading the climate book, which is like a series of like different essays. It says it's by Greta Thunberg, but it's like a bunch of different people. I think it's a cool book. It has a bunch of different perspectives, like from Indigenous people and from scientists and from journalists, and like it's all together. So I think that's cool.
I'm inspired by the people from my community, you know, because even though they got work or they got kids to take care of, that they make time to go to these community meetings, to be informed about things that are happening in the community, in this fight for environmental justice, right? So I'm really inspired by them because they make time, and us that we're young people, right? So we got a lot of time on our hands. We just got school or sometimes a job, right? But we could look up to them, right? Because even though they got other stuff to do, they always try to make time for this fight. So yeah.
I would say I'm inspired by a lot of people, like both in my community and in my organization, like the two Sophies here who are my co-chairs. And I'm also too really inspired by a lot of activists and organizers from around the world. So one of them is Aisha Siddiqua, who's a climate justice activist from Pakistan. I believe now she lives in New York, and she's a youth delegate, I believe, to the UN Secretary General. So she does a lot of really amazing work around trying to advocate for climate justice for the global South. And I'm also too really inspired by, I would say, I have some friends that organized the March to End Fossil Fuels in New York, which brought together 75,000 people, which was not an easy feat. And I think it's really, really inspiring to be able to like hear the stories from people that are just doing such, I don't know, transformative things.
I'm in the middle of reading a book right now called Youth to Power by Jamie Margolin. She was the founder of Zero Hour, and she was one of the first youth who created a youth movement and organized the early youth-led climate strikes. So she's definitely very inspirational, inspiring. And she offers a lot of good advice in the book. So I definitely recommend you look her up and read the book if you're interested.
Oh, and one more just to add on to is Britt Ray, who's a climate psychologist and researcher who does a lot of work around like eco-anxiety and thinking about climate emotions. She has a book that's called Generation Dread, which is really, really cool. I just started reading it. So.
Oh, I just remembered one more person. In Berkeley, there's a teacher, actually. Her name is Neelam Patil, and she's doing work to implement pocket forests. Actually, the governor did not sign the pocket forest bill this year, which was disappointing. But basically, it's using the Miyawaki forest method to grow really dense like forests. So they're basically like biodiversity high rises in a way. And I think there's going to be a like training day. If you want more information, I can give it to you, but I don't have my phone with me right now. But yes, so I think that's a really cool thing that she's working on, is trying to implement more green spaces, more like biodiversity hotspots throughout our cities. It's just better for all of our health, and it looks nicer too.
If no one has any more questions, I'd like to thank all our panelists for coming today.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a program manager for Youth Action for the Planet, so I get to work very closely with the leadership design book. I want to say thank you again to Dominic, Layla, Finn, and Harper for sharing their experiences and expertise throughout the climate justice movement, and to Survey for moderating. Let's give them all another round of applause. And I want to thank each of you all as well for being here and engaging thoughtfully with both the panelists, but also in advance with each other, to be here with like-minded youth. Let's give a round of applause for everyone here today who's focusing their hearts and minds on youth power for climate justice. So in a minute, we're going to wrap up our panel and Q&A, and I'm going to have us all take a group photo from our lovely photographer, Nicole, who's over here. If you don't want your group, if you don't want to be have your photo taken in the group photo, you can step aside. And then after we take our group photo, we were going to move into our lunch groups for our networking session. The goal of this networking session that Pablo and Vivian planned is to build power and leverage the fact that so many like-minded youth are in the room today. We hope you all will have conversations, build relationships, as Dominic is saying, get each other's contact information, and also keep connecting on how we can work together in our niche interest areas beyond this day of action. As we're talking about burnout and sustaining the activist work we do also, let's remember how crucial joy and community are for this organizing work with the help of one another. So first we're gonna, as I just said, move into this alcove area outside the boardroom to take a photo. And then after that, we are going to move into our lunch groups. So you should have gotten your lunch group in your registration email, but they're also